This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Around the far turn, it is still Wildcat Red. General A-Rod a half length behind. Cairo Prince being sent along. Constitution is going to get through an opening on the inside. Here he comes, bounding through on the rail. Constitution up the rail with Javier Castellano. Head and head with Wildcat Red. On the outside, General A-Rod. Cairo Prince, it's Wildcat Red. Constitution, head and head. Wildcat Red, Constitution won a Florida Derby, and Constitution has won!
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. I'm Mark Asano. On this morning's show, some dirt on Kenneally. During our three-year-old segment, we'll recap the Florida and Louisiana Derbies, and we'll update our Derby Dozen. Then we will welcome in a trio of special guests. From Southern California, Mr. Art Sherman, whose California Chrome will start as the likely favorite in today's Santa Anita Derby. He will be followed by Mr. John Sadler, whose Candy Boy, in desperate need of Derby points, goes in the Santa Anita Derby. And finally, we hope to get Mr. Eddie Kenneally, who as we speak is in flight from South Florida to New York, where he will run Schivarelli in today's Wood Memorial. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us for this, our April 5th edition of the program, which is being sponsored by Parting Glass Racing, Saratoga's original racing partnership, and they have been red hot of late. Visit them on the web at partingglassracing.com. Good morning on a very important day of racing for the three-year-olds with both the Santa Anita Derby and the Wood, and again, a very busy show, hopefully with three special guests. We begin after switching to Polytrack in 2006. Kenneally will be going back to a dirt main track beginning this fall. Kenneally President and CEO Bill Thomason said, and I quote, "Kenneally's mission is to provide the highest level of racing possible, and in order to accomplish that going forward, a dirt surface is preferable," end quote. Kenneally is looking to host the Breeders' Cup and follows Del Mar as the latest track to go back to dirt. Remember, the main reasons tracks went to synthetic, it was safer, and it held fields together when the races were washed off the turf. Well, recently released statistics show that synthetic is safer than dirt. And Cluster of Stars, the undefeated sprinting filly, who beat a couple of Grade 1 winners in last year's Grade 2 Gallant Bloom, has been named the 2013 New York Bred Horse of the Year. All right, our three-year-old segment will begin with some news on this afternoon's Wood Memorial. Kid Cruz, who was entered for the Wood, has been scratched. The winner of the private terms in last, Kid Cruz has been battling a shoulder strain, and his trainer Linda Rice simply ran out of time. He is not 100%, therefore has been scratched. And Tonalist, who was second behind Constitution in a February Gulfstream allowance, was forced to miss today's Wood due to a minor lung infection. And to be honest, I thought both he and Kid Cruz would have legitimate chances in there. And Joel Rosario is leaving strong mandate for Tapiture in next Saturday's Arkansas Derby. Rosario will replace Ricardo Santana Jr., who had ridden Tapiture in all of his previous races. And finally, Toast of New York, who upset last Saturday's UAE Derby, is unlikely to ship to America for the Kentucky Derby, according to his owner, Michael Buckley. And you know, that's actually good news for a lot of horses well down on the Derby points list, including the Florida Derby favorite. And speaking of the Florida Derby and the favorite, it was number 3, Cairo Prince. He was 6-5, coming off a 9-week layoff off that big victory in the Holy Bull and in need of important Derby points. The 3-1 second choice, number 4 Constitution, making his stakes debut. 3.5-1 third choice, the expected speed, number 1 Wildcat Red, the game winner of the Fountain of Youth in last. And the fourth choice at 4.5-1, number 6 General A-Rod, a head loser to Wildcat Red in the Fountain of Youth. For the call of the Florida Derby, here's Larry Colmus.
Spot has taken the outside stall. They're all in line. We are ready for the start. They're off in the Florida Derby. And Wildcat Red comes out running. And General A-Rod is away running in second position as they move for the first turn. All Star is next and Constitution is down on the inside. Cairo Prince is fifth early and he's 4 lengths off the lead, and then Spot in between horses. He's tall, and Matador is along the rail at the back of the field and racing just 4 lengths off of Wildcat Red, who makes the pace on the first turn. As they head on to the backstretch, Wildcat Red leading General A-Rod by 3/4 of a length. And Constitution is running in third position on the inside. As they go to the backstretch, he's just 2 lengths off the lead. The opening quarter mile was in 24 seconds flat. It's a reasonable pace here for Wildcat Red, who's out there by a length. General A-Rod, Spot on the outside, and Constitution. Cairo Prince is fifth right now, and he's 4 lengths off the lead. Then Matador, who's down at the rail with 4.5 to make up. And then Longshot All-Star and East Hall at the back of the field. 6 lengths covers them all, and they went 48 seconds flat for a half mile. Wildcat Red and his nemesis General A-Rod, and they're a neck apart as they move into the far turn. And Constitution is a handy third right behind them. Cairo Prince begins his charge now on the outside. He's within 2 lengths of the lead. Then Matador and Spot around the far turn. It is still Wildcat Red, General A-Rod a half length behind. Cairo Prince being sent along. Constitution is going to get through an opening on the inside. Here he comes, bounding through on the rail. Constitution up the rail with Javier Castellano, head and head with Wildcat Red. On the outside, General A-Rod, Cairo Prince. It's Wildcat Red, Constitution, head and head. Wildcat Red, Constitution won a Florida Derby, and Constitution has won.
The lightly raced Constitution remains unbeaten in 3 career starts as he slips through inside of longtime leader Wildcat Red and outgames that one by a neck to capture the Florida Derby. General A-Rod, who stalked the pace from outside, weakened a bit for third, while favored Cairo Prince was an uninspired fourth. Despite having had only 2 previous races, both at this Gulfstream meet, Constitution showed maturity beyond his experience level. He would sit in behind Wildcat Red, he took dirt in his face, and while he did get rank early on, he never gave up. And when a narrow seam would develop along the fence turning for home, Constitution would go through it like a pro and outgame Wildcat Red, who is extremely game himself. All in all, a very fine effort from a colt who didn't make his racing debut until January 11th of this year. In defeat, Wildcat Red ran well again. While I believe he'll be at his very best at 7-8 furlongs, Wildcat Red continues to perform very well as the distances get longer. Now, Johnny V aboard Wildcat Red, while in front approaching the quarter pole, glanced inside of him and saw Javier and Constitution on the fence, but left enough room to eventually get beat. Johnny said after the race that Wildcat Red was trying to get out, but despite that, kept on running hard. You know, is it the Gulfstream surface which continues to carry Wildcat Red, or is he just better than most of us think? General A-Rod made his presence felt throughout on the outside, but didn't apply nearly as much pressure to the leader as he did last time in the Fountain of Youth. Each of the first 3 finishers likely has enough Derby points and is pointing for the first Saturday in May. That is not exactly the case for Cairo Prince. With his somewhat dull fourth, giving him a total of only 24 points, Cairo Prince is questionable to make the Derby. Kieran and the owners knew the risk they were taking with Derby points by not running Cairo Prince in the Fountain of Youth, putting all their eggs into one basket, that basket being the Florida Derby. And I'll tell you, I feel very confident in saying, I've interviewed Kieran for a very long time, Kieran has got to be shocked at that performance from Cairo Prince. He was fully expecting his colt to run big, but after making a nice wide run to get into contention to the far turn, just flattened out. He never punched. Was it the 9 weeks off? Was it the better competition? Was it the 9 furlongs? I mean, it's hard to believe that Cairo Prince can't handle 9 furlongs at Gulfstream after winning the Holy Bull at 8.5 furlongs so easily. But the Derby point system may have gotten one of the better colts remaining in this injury-plagued crop. Just one other thing coming out of the Florida Derby. Some people were fascinated by Spot, who was 10-1 after coming off a well-off-the-pace win in the 7 furlong swale. You know, I'm just talking to you from decades of experience. More times than not, closing sprinters do not do that well stretching out. That's certainly been the case for Kobe's back, and that was the case for Spot in here. So, in 4 weeks, Constitution will attempt to become the first horse since what? Apollo, more than 100 years ago, to win the Derby while not having raced at 2. Next up, the Louisiana Derby, the 19-10 favorite, number 1 Intense Holiday, the come-from-behind winner of the Risen Star and Last. The co-second choice is at 3-1, number 6, Vickers in Trouble. A distant third in the Risen Star off a tough trip, and number 9, In Trouble, who was a game third in the Gotham in his 2014 debut and Last. Couple of things to watch for at the break and early on in the race. At the break, watch what happens to my live long shot, number 7, Commanding Curve. And as far as the pace, on paper it appeared it would be quick and contentious. For the call of the Louisiana Derby, here's John Dooley.
They are in the gate. And they're off in the Louisiana Derby. And Commanding Curve got pinched back at the start. Here's Vickers in Trouble out toward the front with Louise Flower. In Trouble is right there too. And Vickers in Trouble is just the leader as they head toward the first turn. Albano fourth on the outside. Intense Holiday is in fifth. Goldhawk sixth in between horses. First time blinkered, Rise Up is running wide as they round the first turn with Vickers in Trouble now going out to lead them to the back of the track. And Rise Up pulling hard on the outside. Then comes Flat Gone, settled in front of King Cyrus, who's second to last, and Commanding Curve trails. First quarter 23 and 2/5 seconds. It's Vickers in Trouble in front of Louise Flower, racing up the backstretch with In Trouble third, and Vickers in Trouble setting the tone. Rise Up, a methodical move on the outside. They're very well grouped as they head to the half-mile pole. With Intense Holiday now moving up between horses. In Trouble is fifth. Albano wide sixth. Might have just been hampered there by In Trouble. They have 4 furlongs to go. Vickers in Trouble leads the way. Then comes Gold Hawk, Flat Gone, King Cyrus, and Commanding Curve. Half mile for Vickers in Trouble, 47 and 4/5 seconds. For Rosie Napravnik, Vickers in Trouble takes them to 3 furlongs out in front of Rise Up. Here comes Intense Holiday, making this bold move on the turn as they come toward the top of the stretch. It's Vickers in Trouble and Intense Holiday. In Trouble, Albano's been racing wide. They turn for home past the quarter pole. 3/4 went in 1:12 flat. It's Vickers in Trouble with 3/16 to go. Vickers in Trouble now leads Intense Holiday by 5 lengths, but they're deep in the final furlong. Commanding Curve toward the inside, now into third. Albano's fourth. In Trouble's fifth. And Vickers in Trouble's in front. Close to the finish. The Louisiana Derby to the Louisiana bred. Vickers in Trouble.
Vickers in Trouble never had any trouble as he seized the lead immediately under Rosie and turned back all challenges to capture the Louisiana Derby by a handy 3.5 lengths. Intense Holiday, who was bumped pretty soundly into the far turn and who raced on the wrong lead while lugging in through the lane, finished a, pretty ugly second, while Commanding Curve, who was bumped hard at the break, causing him to lose all position, rallied for third. When the expected contentious early pace never materialized, due in part to number 8, rise up acting quite goofy with the blinkers, and the riders of number 9 In Trouble and number 10 Albano not using their colt's natural speed, as much early as expected, Rosie seized the moment. She put the diminutive Vickers In Trouble in front and basically coasted, earning a spot in the Kentucky Derby. As for Intense Holiday, who I thought was pretty impressive, rallying from far off a conservative pace to win the Risen Star in last, well, he was placed much closer to the early pace here than in any of his other races. I think it was the combination of having drawn the inside post and the way the pace developed. I think those were the major reasons why he was so close to the pace. I think Todd and Mike Smith were a bit concerned about getting pinned in because he doesn't really like to race inside. But you know what? You can rarely change a horse's running style, best running style with any success. Considering the circumstances, I thought Intense Holiday ran okay. Although his antics in the stretch, being on the wrong lead and lugging in, brushing the rail, they are a concern after you've raced this many times. Like the winner, Intense Holiday has enough points to go to Louisville and will likely be pointed that way. I spoke to Donnie Lucarelli earlier this week. He said the colt came out of the race well, just some minor scrapes, nothing serious. Commanding Curve, making only his second start of the year, ran pretty well after losing valuable position at the break. He could have a pretty nice future. In Trouble, who crossed the wire fourth, was disqualified and placed fifth for interfering with Albano. That DQ will cost In Trouble some valuable Derby points. We will look at those Derby points next week after the two big races today. Right now, let's take a look at the Florida Derby and the Louisiana Derby, the internal fractions, the final running time, and compare them to the other 9 furlong races run last Saturday. Now again, you're comparing Gulfstream with Gulfstream and Fairgrounds with Fairgrounds. At Gulfstream, not a lot was made of the pace in the Florida Derby, but as you can see, it was considerably slower through the middle stages than the Rampart and the Gulfstream Oaks. It was a half second slower to the half mile, and it was a second and a quarter slower than the Rampart, and 0.7 of a second slower than the Gulfstream Oaks to 3/4. So, basically, Wildcat Red, kind of had his own way in front. Now, they picked it up in the last part of the Florida Derby. Let's face it, when you look at the last 3 furlongs, the Florida Derby went 37.16, the Rampart went 39.06, and the Gulfstream Oaks went 38.89. So they came home pretty good. As far as the New Orleans Handicap versus the Louisiana Derby, the fractions through the first 3 quarters were very similar. They really were. But Palace Malice came home very quickly in the New Orleans Handicap, where Vickers In Trouble, 38.63 for the last 3/8 of the Louisiana Derby, 37.02 for the last 3/8 of the New Orleans Handicap. So that's where those races differed quite dramatically. And we are up to our first break on this April 5th edition of the show. When we return, we will welcome in Mr. Art Sherman as we go to the break, the aforementioned New Orleans Handicap. Field of 6, but really a 2-horse race. Number 5, Normandy Invasion, 7-2 in the line, was the 11-10 favorite, while number 8, Palace Malice, giving Normandy Invasion 6 pounds, was the 6-5 second choice. So we will take a look at a piece of the New Orleans Handicap to the break. Back with Art Sherman right after these messages.
Racing up the backstretch, it's Breitster in front. Leads for Dubai by a half length. Palace Malice, and ever closer third now for Mike Smith and Sunbeam right there toward the rail in the leading quartet. Normandy Invasion in 5th, and filing off of Breitster, and it's 5 more to Golden Soul, running in 6th. Breitster's half-mile split, 47 4/5 seconds. They have less than a half mile to go. Breitster continues to shoulder the load from Port Dubai. On the outside is Palace Malice now, making his move with just over 3 furlongs to go. Sunbeam toward the inside, still holding down the fort in 4th. Normandy Invasion starts to quicken on the outside, and Normandy Invasion now gains ground, but it's Palace Malice who looms in front. Sunbeam is now second to last. Golden Soul is the trailer. Palace Malice floats Normandy Invasion very wide, and they're at the top of the stretch. 3/4 in 1 minute 11 and 4/5 seconds. They're in the final 3/16. Palace Malice. Palace Malice drifts, leads Normandy Invasion, who's in full stretch now. Sunbeam third and still hanging in there toward the rail. Inside the final 16th, it's Palace Malice. Palace Malice inching clear close home. The New Orleans handicap to Palace Malice. Normandy Invasion was second, Sunbeam third, Pour Dubai fourth, then Golden Soul, and Breitster was last home. Palace Malice in 1 minute 48 and 4/5 seconds. Mike Smith for the Dogwood Stable and Todd Pletcher. Palace Malice today in New Orleans.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano, and Palace Malice for Todd and Mike Smith by an authoritative 4 3/4 lengths over Normandy Invasion to win the New Orleans handicap. Our first guest this morning, well, when 2014 began, he was training the colt who people said won the last stakes race in the history of Hollywood Park. Well, now that colt is arguably the most exciting 3-year-old in America. That colt is California Chrome, his trainer. Joining us live via telephone from Southern California, Mr. Art Sherman. Art, Mark Asano welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Art. Nice to have you. Art, the last time we had you on the show was the morning of the San Felipe. And you told us you were going to have a number of friends and family at the racetrack that day. It was going to be exciting, but you admitted to being a little bit nervous. Well, Art, as our audience watches the San Felipe, and California Chrome is number 4 in here. Art, as it turned out, there wasn't much to be nervous about. Talk about this dominating performance.
Yeah, it was quite a thrill to see him run and be so dominant as he was in that race. You know, it even surprised me. I thought he would run big, but I didn't think he would run that big, to be honest with you. You know, he really freaked in that race. You know, I'm just hoping now today. I know it's a lot tougher bunch of horses, but he's doing great. He went over there and he trained this morning, and he's doing good. And we just need a little racing luck, and I think he'll show up today.
Here in the San Felipe, Victor Espinoza seized the opportunity at the break to put him on the lead and control the pace. Art, was that something that you had discussed with Victor beforehand? Because we know your colt is not a one-dimensional speed horse.
You know, I just never give much instructions. You know, a lot of things happen in a race, and, you know, I rode for 23 years, and Victor's got a lot of confidence in his whole, you know, he broke, you know, he really got a flyer leaving the gate. You know, I've never seen him that. He opened up 2 before anybody got out of the gate. It was kind of freaky, you know, going into that first turn, and I'm saying, oh, wow, I got into him, you know what I mean? And he went to try and rate him, and, man, he just run off with him, actually, the first part of it. And I said, well, we'll see how he likes to lead, you know, and so he went on the lead, and Midnight Hawk was laying second to him and laid second to him, and he was laying second to him at the wire. You know, he just drew away, and I was kind of odd at the performance because, you know, I kept looking at the times and, you know, 45 and 2, and I'm looking at 9 and change, you know, saying, wow, you know, I hope he's got something in the tank. And when he caught to him, he just opened up and just cruised home. I was kind of, sitting in the stands myself watching the race, and I'm saying, wow, it's a different dimension for me to watch him run like that. So I was quite thrilled.
Now, Art, soon after the race, and even a week after the San Felipe, when our Julie Hoxie called you, you were uncertain if you were going to run in the Santa Anita Derby or you were going to train to the Kentucky Derby. Why were you a bit uncertain at that point about what you were going to do with California Chrome?
Well, it's I always give him between 6 and 7 weeks between races. You know what I mean? And I just want him to be himself when he, and then all of a sudden about 7, 8 days later, he just kicked it in. He just was a different horse. All of a sudden, he said, I got my energy back, let's roll. And he was full of himself and training like a bomb, you know what I mean? I said, wow, I guess he's recovered enough to run in this race, Which, if he wasn't recovered fully, I wouldn't have never ran him in the Santa Anita Derby today. But he was awful sharp right now. Best I think I've seen him come into a race in a long time.
Art, he's better coming into the Santa Anita Derby than he was going into the San Felipe?
Well, I'll tell you, if you've been over here and watched him work a week ago, you would have said, wow, I couldn't even believe it. He blew out in 46 and 2, just breezing, went a minute flat, galloped out 3/4 and 13 and changed it. Victor said he couldn't even hardly pull him up. He went all the way around the track. So, but I looked at him and I said, well, I guess he's touting us, So I just hope we have a good trip today, and I'm sure he'll do some running. I don't know if he'll win it or not, but they'll have him to beat. I'm almost sure.
Art, when we had you on the show last time, I mentioned to the audience that if California Chrome makes it to the Derby the first Saturday in May, that'll be the first time you've had a horse go to the Kentucky Derby. But it was a few years ago, 1955 to be exact, that you traveled to the Kentucky Derby with swaps for trainer Mesh Tenney. Tell us what that was like.
Well, I was 18 years old. I was young and quite an experience to be back there, boy from California, It's really a thrill. and Swaps was probably one of the best horses I ever sat on, you know what I mean? He's had 6 world records at one time, he was just a freaky good horse, it was an enjoyable time in my life, I've always said, gee, I would love to have a horse just like him one of these days, but maybe I do, you know what I mean? I'm keeping my fingers crossed, It's been a long haul to come back to Kentucky. Believe me, if we have a good race today and everybody comes out of it sound and doing good, I'm looking forward to Kentucky. I always said if I went back, I'd love to have a contender. So I'm hoping that today will be the day.
Art, is there anything that you can take away from that experience with Swaps and Mesh Tenney nearly 60 years ago that you can put into play for California Chrome?
Well, it's hard to judge horses by one horse to another. You know what I mean? And I'm old school. I just let it. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Just keep the horses sound and doing good. And I go one race at a time. I don't like to say, hey, we're going to win the Derby and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. I'm just focusing right now on the Santa Anita Derby and just hope my horse runs well.
Well, Art, we thank you once again for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. We really appreciate it, and all the best later this afternoon with California Chrome and the Santa Anita Derby.
I thank you.
Thank you, Art. Art Sherman, ladies and gentlemen. What a wonderful story this has been with the consistent improvement of California Chrome, and what a story it would be if he gets to Churchill as a legitimate threat come May 3rd. And we are up to our next break. When we return back to Southern California, where we'll welcome in Mr. John Sadler as we go to the break, the Fairgrounds Oaks. And the odds-on favorite, number 1, Intappable. The 2-1 second choice, number 5, Unbridled Forever. So we will take a look at a piece of the Fairgrounds Oaks to the break. Back with John Sadler right after these messages.
Quarter for 50 Shades of Gold. 24 and 1/5 seconds. They have 5 furlongs to go. 50 Shades of Gold dictates her own terms to Untappable, who's right up there for Rosina Pravnik. Unbridled Forever is next in third by a length and a half. Mary Rita fourth. Still this 7-length break to Artist Cry. They have a half mile to go. 50 Shades of Gold still from Untappable, Unbridled Forever, Mary Rita, and Artist Cry. The half mile, 48 and 1/5 seconds. They have 3 furlongs to go. Untappable is right at 50 Shades of Gold side. Unbridled Forever moving into position on the outside. So here's Untappable and Unbridled Forever. At the inside, 50 Shades of Gold is now third. Here's the quarter pole. Heads are turned for home. Mary Rita and Artist Cry has trailed, and now they're at the top of the stretch. 3/4 went in 1 minute 12 and 4/5 seconds. It is Untappable. There's a furlong to go. Untappable has opened up by 4 now under Rosina Pravnik. On the inside, 50 Shades of Gold. Unbridled Forever is third. It's Untappable showing her superiority in the Fairgrounds Oaks. She won in 1:43 flat. She won by a half dozen lengths from 50 Shades of Gold. Unbridled Forever, Mary Rita, and Artist Cry never challenged.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
The big day is here. You've told everybody. You've dressed the part. Your heart is pounding in your chest. Your horse is rolling down the stretch. He's coming. He's closing. He's the winner! You're a winner with Parting Glass Racing. PartingGlassRacing.com. PartingGlassRacing.wow.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Casano. My thanks to Art Sherman once again for having joined us. And Untappable, Steve Asmussen, Rosina Pravnik dominates the Fairgrounds Oaks by 7 3/4 over 50 Shades of Gold. Unbridled Forever third. Untappable likely to be the favorite in the Kentucky Oaks. Our next guest this morning has been on quite a roll of late at Santa Anita. Today, he's got a really busy afternoon with 4 stake starters in both Arcadia as well as here at Aqueduct, headed by Candy Boy in the Santa Anita Derby. We welcome in live via telephone Mr. John Sadler. John, Mark Casano welcoming you back to Down the Stretch.
Hey, good morning.
John, nice to have you as always. The last time you joined us on the show was the morning of the Robert Lewis Stakes back on February 8th. And we are about to take a look.
I like that. That's good luck.
Yes, it is. And we're about to take a look at it with our audience. Candy Boy is number 1. John, talk about this performance, if you would.
Well, he got a very good trip that day. It was everything we were looking for. He sat off the pace kind of like we expected him to, and he rallied when, Gary asked him. So we were very happy. It was his first stakes win. It's a good second in the cash call. So good race, and we're very pleased.
John, this effort was so different from the Hollywood Futurity. And I'm not talking about the result of the race, but in the Hollywood Futurity made that really premature run down the backstretch. Here he sat and sat and sat until Gary asked him, is this the fact that the colt is maturing or the fact that Gary just knew him a little bit better?
I mean, both. I think, he's such a big horse, you don't really want to get in his way. So I think when Gary rode him the first time, it was a big, bulky field. And when he was making a run, he just, kind of wanted to stay out of his way. But having worked him after that race, and he settled in and, a different kind of trip, obviously, the next time.
Now, John, you decided not to race Candy Boy for the 8 weeks between the Lewis and today's Santa Anita Derby. Why?
We thought if we won the Lewis, the best way to get to the Kentucky Derby, or that's not the best way, but the way that's best for the horse was to give him the time between the Lewis and the Santa Anita Derby, win the Santa Anita Derby, or run second, and then go on to Kentucky.
Well, we know how important Kentucky Derby points are. Last week, we had Karen McLaughlin on talking to Karen about Cairo Prince. How do you weigh that time off with, versus the extra opportunity to get those critical Derby points?
Well, it's not always, just about the Kentucky Derby. It's about what's best for your horse. I mean, if we're not, 1, 2, 3 today or something, do you really deserve to go, or do you really want to go? So we want to, this is a plan we came up with. Me and the owner are comfortable with it. Gary's comfortable with it. And, we're ready for this afternoon. We just hope it goes well.
All right, how has Candy Boy been doing in the 8 weeks since we last saw him on the racetrack?
Really well. He looks beautiful. I mean, he looks about a 10 out of 10. His hair's perfect. His eating terrific, and showed a lot of enthusiasm in his training. So we're very happy with the horse.
Now, John, there doesn't appear, and we always have to be, careful how we describe the possible pace scenario, but it doesn't appear as though there's a lot of early speed to run with California Chrome later this afternoon. How do you foresee Candy Boy settling in? Where do you see him? How do you see him running in this afternoon's Santa Anita Derby?
I see him, probably his race is to, he has a high cruising speed. I think he's, probably going to be sitting off of California Chrome, second or third, I would imagine.
What is your Colt's best running style? I mean, is it best for him to have a legitimate contested pace up front where he can settle early and make one late run? What is the ideal pace scenario for Candy Boy?
Well, the ideal pace scenario is that somebody runs with California Chrome. I don't know if it doesn't look like that's going to happen, but there's some other horses in there. It just depends on what they want to do. So you just don't know. You don't know what everybody else is going to do. But, what I do know is in our own horse, he has a style of running like he ran last time. He's going to run a similar type race. What I do think is in his favor is the fact that it's 1 1/8 miles. And I know my horse wants to run a long way. So in a 1 1/8 miles race in a relatively small field, you should get a trip. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So if he's good enough, so be it. If he's not good enough, it's not like he's not. We don't anticipate him having a ton of trouble. That's a stupid thing to say. Anything could happen, but you know what I'm saying. We think we're going to get a nice trip.
All right, here in New York, John, you're going to be running Cristo in the Wood. How is he doing? How did he ship to New York?
Shipped well, and he's been really good over the track there. It rained there last night, but he's had 2 nice days over the track there with some good gallops. I always thought he's a Derby horse in my brain. In his last start, I told the rider to take him back off the pace. He really resented it. He didn't run a good race. But I think it was more trying to change his running style. Plus, I thought maybe the track that they ran on the other day was very speed favoring. So I made 2 mistakes, that day, changing the horse's style on a speed favoring track. So, I wanted to give him another opportunity. I didn't want to run him with my other horse over here. So it was either take a chance in the Florida Derby or the Wood. I chose the Wood for him. So, he's trained really well, so we're going to let him go back to his style, which is to be up close. Doesn't mean he's in front, but he might be first or second. We're not going to grab him and try to make him a deep closer like I did last time.
Well, you know, you're getting so good at this, you just answered the next two questions that I had. So when the gates open for the Wood this afternoon, Martin Garcia is going to let him run on out of there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
He's going to get his chance to run kind of his race. You know, you saw the race with Midnight Hawk was a good race. You know, so we're gonna let him run kind of up that style. Doesn't mean to be in front, but I bet he's 1-2 kind of a run.
Also here in New York, you have Kobe's back for the Bayshore. Proven as a closing sprinter, but not the same racehorse going 2 turns. What's that all about with him, John?
He just won't relax. He won't relax going around 2 turns. He, he's a very kind of a hard horse to train. And you got to relax to run a distance. So we're going to take him back to under a mile for right now. I didn't want to wait. There's some series of good races with big money at under a mile. So when he came back from Arkansas, he wasn't injured. He looked good. We breezed him a couple of times. Corey breezed him here on Monday, and he's a phenomenal workhorse. He went as easy as a horse could work. So, we said, okay, we're going to give him another shot back at a shorter distance, where he's been very tough. He's a multiple stakes winner already. He's second to Shared Belief in the other one. So we're back to short with him today, and hope he does well.
And finally, back at Santa Anita, you have recent maiden winner Honey Ride for the Oaks. This is quite an ambitious step up in class. Tell us about her.
It's a nice filly. We always felt she wanted to run long. Broke her maiden on her 3rd start. And then there hasn't really been anything. We prefer to run her a little easier than this. But there hasn't really been anything for her. So, they thought all week there would be a 5-horse field. So if we could get Group 1 placed in there, we're going to be really happy.
Well, John, as always, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. And all the best later this afternoon with Candy Boy and Christo and Kobe's back and Honey Ride. And we'll look forward to speaking with you again very soon.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. John Sadler, ladies and gentlemen. This is really interesting in this afternoon's Santa Anita Derby, because obviously a Candy Boy needs Kentucky Derby points. But they're not going to change his running style. If California Chrome is loose on the lead, they're going to let Candy Boy run his race. He needs to finish 2nd, possibly 3rd, but, to get a good night's sleep, I think he needs to run at least 2nd this afternoon. And it's going to be fascinating to see how Candy Boy runs in this afternoon's $1 Million Santa Anita Derby. And we are up to our next break. When we return, we will hope to have Mr. Eddie Kenneally fresh off the plane. As we go to this break, the Gulfstream Park Oaks, the even money favorite, number 6, In Tune. The 9-2 second choice, I thought this was a very nice price on number 8, House Rules. So we will take a look at the Gulfstream Oaks to the break. Back with more right after these messages.
Goes in, and they're all in line. They're racing in the Gulfstream Oaks, and it's Whomping Willow out for the front. And then it's Camille Claudel away running in 2nd position, followed by In Tune. House Rules on the far outside as they race into the turn. Penwith is next. Then comes America, and Joint Return is at the back of the field, 7 lengths off of front-running Whomping Willow and Corey Lannery, who make the pace here in the Gulfstream Oaks by a length over the favorite In Tune running in 2nd. Camille Claudel is 3rd. Then House Rules on the outside, followed by America. Penwith is next, and it's a good 6 lengths back to late-running Joint Return, who's taken well off the pace by Kendrick Carmouche. The opening quarter mile was 24 seconds flat. Onto the backstretch, Whomping Willow well restrained on the lead here early, with In Tune pressing the pace on the outside and Camille Claudel in 3rd. And then it's House Rules. America follows 5th by 2. Penwith is next, and then it's 6 lengths back to Joint Return, who is last after a 47 3/2 mile, and they move for the far turn. where Whomping Willow has led every step of the way, and In Tune is right there running in second. Camille Claudel third to the inside. And then it's House Rules, America right in behind them. Penwith and Joint Return still last. Around the far turn, Whomping Willow is the leader. 3/4 in 1:11 and 1. And now here comes In Tune and House Rules to confront Whomping Willow on the lead. Camille Claudel is next. America's on the far outside. Penwith and Joint Return, and they're coming to the top of the stretch. And it's In Tune and House Rules. And they turn for home together. America's third. Into the final furlong. In Tune on the inside. House Rules on the outside. They're nose to nose at the 16th pole, and House Rules has a head in front. In Tune keeps fighting. House Rules, In Tune. What a battle in the Oaks. In Tune, House Rules. Here's the wire. In Tune, undefeated. House Rules, America, and Camille Claudel.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano. My thanks to John Sadler once again for having joined us. And In Tune for Todd and Javier remains unbeaten with a hard-fought victory over House Rules in the Gulfstream Oaks. Our final guest this morning, the last time we had him on, he went out and won 2 stakes races on Florida Millions Day. Today he's going to try to upset the Wood Memorial with Schivarelli. We welcome in live via telephone from New York, Mr. Eddie Kenneally. Eddie, Mark Asano welcoming you back to the show.
Mark, hi. Thanks for having me.
Always nice to have you, Eddie. As our audience watches Schivarelli rally to win his debut back in January, and for our audience, he is number 4 in here. Eddie, tell us what he was like training up to his debut.
Trained very well. We were hoping to run him in the fall of his 2-year-old year. He had a little shin issue, so we had to wait and back off. Finally was ready to run in January and ran very well first time out. We liked him coming into the race. He had worked very well prior to that, so we thought he'd run well first out, and he did. He got knocked sideways leaving the gate, but he overcame that and came from back and won nicely.
Eddie, a lot of handicappers, whether this is right or wrong, a lot of handicappers feel if a trainer leaves a horse in New York for the winter, instead of taking him to Florida, with a main string, it means that they don't think very much of him. What was the case with leaving Schivarelli in New York over the winter?
Well, the purse structure, for one, the purses are very, very good, and we felt like the maiden races and the air and allowance races for 3-year-olds during the winter months are much easier at Aqueduct than they are at Gulfstream. In fact, they're the toughest in the country at Gulfstream. And we had some other horses for the same people racing at Gulfstream this winter, so we wanted to separate them a little bit, and that's the reason he was one that we left in New York for the meet.
Eddie, in a moment, we're going to have a shot of him on the screen for our audience. Would you please take a moment to describe him physically for our audience, and what's he like mentally?
Yeah, well, mentally he's about as laid back as you can get. He's very easy to manage. He's not a difficult horse at all to be around. He's pretty kind and easy going. Physically now, he's a horse. He's a Mayfoal, so he's a horse that really took a while to bulk up and strengthen up. But over the last month or two, he's really, really matured and developed into a very good-looking horse, and he's starting to really muscle out now. And he's just a horse that maybe took a while to come to hand. So I think his best races are ahead of him.
We wanted to show his February allowance victory at Aqueduct, but it was so foggy that nobody would be able to see anything. You stretched him out that day. He caught a muddy sealed track and won by 12. What did Cornelio Velasquez say to your assistant after the race? What can you tell us about that, kind of unknown or unseen performance that afternoon at Aqueduct?
Well, I talked to Cornelio myself after the race, and he felt like the horse was very impressive, and he thought that he won with a little bit in hand, and that he did it quite easily. Obviously, you can't see the running of the race with the fog, but he said the horse did it very, very well and wanted more distance, and he assures me the horse will be even better going longer.
Eddie, did he say anything about, from a handicapping standpoint, we always have to concern ourselves a bit with a huge performance on a wet racetrack. Did Cornelio say anything about the colt absolutely loving it wet, that he's a freaky racehorse over an extremely wet surface?
Well, the wet surface is not a problem for him at all. He handled that just fine, but I feel like that he's as good or better on a fast track. His first race was on a fast track, and he handled that just fine. And all of his work, we can never breathe in the mud. So all of these works have been on a fast track, and his last few works have been by far his best. So I feel like he's getting better, and the fast track is actually a plus for this horse.
Speaking of Cornelio Velasquez, who rode him in both his starts, he's not riding for you today. He's riding Los Barachos. Was that Cornelio's call, or with the ability to get Javier, was that your call to replace him?
Well, we're always happy to have Javier Castellano as the leading rider in the nation, and we're delighted to have him. We were unsure where we were going to run Schivarelli, and because we had thought about possibly running him in the Bayshore, and we were leaning towards the Bayshore at one time, and then we, at the last minute almost, we decided to go into Wood Memorial, and as it turned out, Cornelio had already committed to somebody else for that particular race. So we didn't have a rider then, and fortunately Javier Castellano became available, and it all worked out.
Eddie, this is obviously a major step up in class for a lightly raced colt. Realistically, what do you expect from Schivarelli in this afternoon's Wood?
Yeah, I mean, it is a big step up in quality horses, seasoned horses that we have to campaign against today. It's certainly a big jump, and he's 15-1 morning line, and I think that's accurate. So certainly he's going to have to improve again dramatically to get a piece of it today. I feel like he will improve. I don't know if he's going to improve enough to get a piece of it, but he's doing very well. We're taking a shot, and we'll see what happens.
And Eddie, before we let you go, you're running a fascinating horse by the name of Gotham News, a European import you have in today's sixth at Aqueduct. What can you tell us about him?
Well, the horse has come from Europe. He's 2 for 2 on the synthetic in France. He's never run in this country. He's bred to be a dirt horse. He's trained very well on the dirt at Palm Meadows, and his last couple of works have been very, very good. So we're trying the dirt for the first time. The horse hadn't run for 13 or 14 months. He may need a race today. I think he'll run well, but this 200 allowance race today came up extremely tough, so we might get a piece of it.
Eddie, as always, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. All the best later this afternoon with Schivarelli in the Wood.
Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eddie. Eddie Kenneally, ladies and gentlemen. All right, before we leave you this morning, it's time to update our Derby Dozen. We are only 4 weeks out from the first Saturday in May. Let's take a look. At number 1 is Candy Boy, up a spot. He, of course, will go in this afternoon's Santa Anita Derby against our number 2, California Chrome. At number 3, moving up from number 11, is Constitution, who will go next in the Kentucky Derby. At number 4 is Bayern, and he will go next in next Saturday's Arkansas Derby. He is badly in need of Derby points. At number 5 is Samrod, up a spot. He goes in this afternoon's Wood. Tapeter is up a spot at number 6. He will go in the Arkansas Derby with Joel Rosario. Up a spot at number 7 is Opportunity. He goes in today's Santa Anita Derby. Bob Baffert has said that this is kind of a prep race for Opportunity to get him to the Kentucky Derby. Dropping from number 1 to number 8 is Cairo Prince. If he gets enough points, he'll go to the Kentucky Derby. Remaining at number 9 is Cheetu, who will go to the Kentucky Derby. At number 10 is Social Inclusion, the likely favorite for this afternoon's Wood. At number 11, dropping 6 spots, is Intense Holiday. And at number 12 is Vickers in Trouble, who was on our list earlier in the year, but he is a new shooter from last week. 5 of our top 10 go today in either the Santa Anita Derby or the Wood. Another 5 will make their next starts in the Kentucky Derby. And finally, Princess of Silmar, whose outstanding 3-year-old season was marred by a poor effort in last year's Breeders' Cup Distaff, will begin her 4-year-old campaign in Sunday's Cat K Stakes at Aqueduct. It is a 1-turn, 1-mile race, and the Cat K will serve as a prep for the $1 million Ogden Phipps on June 7th. Now that's quite a bit of time in between races. I don't know if owner Ed Stanko and trainer Todd Pletcher are going to find another bridge in between tomorrow's Cat K, but they need to get her ready for possibly facing Beholder and Close Hatches in the $1 million Ogden Phipps on Belmont Stakes Day. All right, time to wrap it up and time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show on the air. Here at the studios of the Clubhouse Racebook in Albany, our associate producer Julie Hoxie, Brian Dorenzo, and Mick Richards. Back in the control room in Schenectady, Pat Peretta directed, and Landis Burgess on audio. And thanks to this morning's guests. Art Sherman, he said earlier, in case you missed it, California Chrome is doing better coming into the Santa Anita Derby than he was going into the San Felipe. That's a little scary. John Sadler, he's got stakes action on both coasts this afternoon, and thanks to Eddie Kenneally. And thanks to this morning's sponsor, Parting Glass Racing, Saratoga's original racing partnership. Visit them on the web at partingglassracing.com. Next Saturday, the Arkansas Derby on dirt, the Bluegrass on synthetic. Next Friday, the 2014 debut of the 2-time reigning Horse of the Year Wise Dan in the Makers 46 Mile at Keeneland. So it's going to be a big next Friday and Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy all the racing action this weekend here at Capitol. Enjoy the Santa Anita Derby in the Wood. Have a wonderful upcoming week. And from all of us here at Down the Stretch, we'll see you next week.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.